Okay,
So we are going to have a public presentation here first before we consider legal advice. And Mr. Eric Pullman of our planning department is going to give a little presentation. And then Amy Wharton from finance may follow up just with a little repeat of what. But anyway, let's get started with Eric and I'll get out the way.
All right. Is this one on? Yeah, all right. So, hello, welcome. Thank you for having us all here again on this afternoon to talk about Sumar Street. As the mayor mentioned, he wanted me to recap the history overall, so that way when we are considering all the facets as we go into the executive session, we are fully remembering how we got to the point that we are at. Mainly because we're going to go all the way back to 2016. So that's about 6 years ago at this point, when this whole process actually started, which is well before we had our landmark partners on board. It's even before we had the neighborhood input session. So 2016, we had the design review board meeting where the former Faison development team was proposing a 20 pump gas station on the site. Through several meetings with that and with the general public and council, we decided to actually purchase out the site from Faison because it was such an important location in the city of Charleston. 2018, we demolished the structure because we found out that a grocery store that has been shuttered for about 6 years in South Carolina heat grows mold really fast. So we tore down the structure as it was. And the following month, we kicked off a very long process with the city residents in order to figure out how to best utilize this location. And then, as you can see, the list goes on and on in terms of different public meetings. All in total, we've had about 14 to 16 different public meetings on this 2.5 acre parcel over the course of 5 years. So this is probably one of the most intense public involved processes that the city has gone through in terms of development. This is the site plan that was submitted back in 2016 to the design review board, which shows just a convenience store and the gas station pumps located on site. I want to make sure that we saw this so we remembered where we came from when we get to the final product, because this was a measure that the original Faison team was suggesting for this location was they would reserve the front portion and we might be able to use that for some other retail function. That's that little crescent building there, but they were fairly determined that the market conditions in the area stated a gas station would be the best use at this spot. Then we entered Plan West Ashley in 2018. With the plan, by this point, we had purchased out the parcel. And the idea when we purchased out the parcel was that the city and county could move forward with the 0.5 cent sales tax and realigning the road, and it gives some more flexibility to the location in terms of redevelopment. Object B there would be the Sumar Street parcel itself, that little bottom one right below that with the tree lined street between Publix in there. That is Sumar Street itself. The sketch shows that we're anticipating one large civic style structure. It also stated that the redevelopment of this parcel should have some form of a welcoming element to it. It need to have an outdoor lawn, and it could even potentially have a structured parking deck on it. So July 2018, so after the adoption of Plan West Ashley, we went through a 2-day workshop where Alan Davis and his team sat down and we drew out anyone who walked in the door and wanted to see what a development looked like on here. We drew it out. There would we had people request everything from Cracker Barrel and Cheesecake Factory. One small child really wanted to see what a go-kart track would look like on it. So we did have some good fun, good input. But then there was also some other serious items along it with wanting a performing arts center, wanting more of an Avondale feel to the location. As part of that workshop, we also had an online survey that was up for 30 days. We had 927 respondents. 733 of them were residents of West Ashley. To give you some comparisons with other surveys the city has done recently, Plan West Ashley had 255 respondents to their 30-day survey. City Plan had 2,500 respondents, which is probably one of the highest ratios of people doing a survey that we've had. And then the One Charleston Parks and Rec Master Plan had 150 online respondents for their survey. What we heard out of the one for Sumar Street, though, was that the majority wanted to see some element of a passive park. They wanted to see small scale retail, again, the Avondale style. And they also wanted to see some more restaurants come into this location. So that's where we generated our program for this spot, which was passive park, small scale, restaurant, commercial, civic cultural. That didn't quite make the top 3 in terms of what should go there, but it was a very close 4th. Other top priorities were the safety for pedestrians and cyclists, improving landscaping, and improving the intersections around the area. And that would take us right to the half-cent sales tax with the county. They were coming up on that project right about the time we were finishing up our input session. They started theirs regarding the realignment of Sam Rittenberg and Old Town Road. Their project went from about August 2018 to November 2020. So they had a 2-year input process where they repeatedly had new designs coming forward to the public for review. And being good municipal partners, we took our program to show the public that whatever occurred at this location, we could fit the program that they wanted onto it. So December 2018, we held our first joint meeting. It was over at, I think it was, I can't remember. It's off Orange Grove Road, one of the churches along there. But pretty good attendance for being held the week before Christmas. The county, the residents got to see what was being proposed in terms of the roadways. And then you can see Alan Davis down in the bottom right. We had our presentation showing how do we fit our program onto these different design elements for the county. So the county went through and then they went from having about 6 different designs. They whittled it down to 2 different designs for the roadways. And that was by July 2019. Again, we went through an effort with Alan Davis in the Urban Design Department. In addition to that, we also had the ULI Technical Assistance Panel come out and make sure that whatever we were proposing would be good for the market in terms of being able to be realistic and buildable. It was a packed attendance hall for that meeting for the West Ashley Commission. This is at the Pearl Theater, which is on Ashley Landing. Seating capacity, I think, is around the 150 area. So that's probably, you're probably looking about 80 to 90 just seated there. It was probably about this was before the presentation started when I still had time to take photos. Once the actual presentations were going, it was standing room only on the side. So at that presentation, we went through the different development styles that could accommodate on the different county layouts for the roadways for these 2 elements. We also went over with them. This is what the ULI Technical Assistance Panel came up with that would be market feasible on this location. And it called for having office with parking deck, a civic building, multi-story, and another office with small scale retail, again, podium parking under. This is what the ULI panel said would happen. During that meeting, we heard from the community though, and what they basically said was they did not want to see any above ground parking decks. They did not want to see any residential uses on the city parcel. They wanted to actually limit the office a little bit and have more of that restaurant and retail. They wanted an emphasis on a community gathering spot and they want it to be suburban in scale. So they did not want to have one solid building that had a parking deck. The county opened up for the final round of community input regarding the realignment after this presentation, and got the numbers after I wrapped this one up. There were 697 comments received, with 87% of the people responding that they did not want to see the roads realigned. They wanted a no build option at this location. So the county had to then go back and reassess what could it do with the half-cent sales tax to still accomplish those other previous goals of beautification, pedestrian safety, bicycle safety, and improving the intersections. Coming back to our project though, after all that input, we gathered it all up, looked over it, reassessed what we could do on our parcel, and this is what came to you guys in the fall of 2019. I think September, late September, this came to you guys. Alan Davis made a presentation in this room. And what it broke out was that this is what the city would be recommending to go onto the parcel that we owned as is, knowing that the likelihood was a no build option at this location. So it called for 2-story building for the Civic, about 25,000 square feet in total for the Civic structure, including offices and an auditorium. It called for retail and restaurant, 1-story each at 9,000 square feet on one side, and then an additional 2-story structure on our site at about 14,000 square feet, again, restaurant and retail. So very city heavy on this go around. And then of course it stated that there was opportunities on the other side of Sumar Street to mirror or do something similar to this. So after we put the RFQ out, Landmark responded back, and what they responded back with was a little bit of a different number when they came into us. What they suggested was actually increasing the private sector side and slightly decreasing the civic side. And guys, correct me if I'm wrong on this, that was basically to try and help balance out how you could do the pro forma of building this as a public-private partnership, correct? All right. With that, May 2020, we showed off to the West Ashley Commission the different footprint styles that could be accommodated with this new program that was based off of their RFQ response. It looked at, do we put the activated side along Old Town, along Sam Rittenberg, or along Sumar Street, kind of the way the RFQ had originally envisioned. What we heard from the West Ashley Commission and the community at this meeting was, we want it on Sam Rittenberg. That's our commercial street. Let Old Town be quieter, let it be more pastoral with more landscaping. That's how we got to our final plan here. As we move through the process, as we move through everything, we have adopted a ULI shared parking standard to accommodate all the different uses that are going to occur on this parcel to maximize the square feet as we can. We have, we are getting out of this a new civic structure along with new city offices and a community gathering spot that's a park, along with, in the short-term future, some type of entry style fountain that's going to really help you understand you've arrived at a specific location. What Landmark is getting out of this is foundationally 3 structures. It looks like 4 on the first floor plan, but that's because the 3rd structure down near Sam Rittenberg and Sumar Street is actually, it's a build over with a breezeway that starts that pedestrian alleyway that runs down the middle and up to our building. We are getting restaurant spaces, retail spaces in small square footprints that are going to be very adaptable to small businesses coming in. These are not large footprints that small businesses won't be able to accommodate. That is the goal of the community. That was our goal. That is what Landmark has helped us achieve. Some other things I just wanted to bring up was the roadway traffic counts from 2021. Sam Rittenberg handles about 19,000 cars, average daily trips per day. And Old Town handles about 20,000 cars, average daily trips per day. And then Sumar Street itself, you're looking at 200 right now. So these roads are very specifically designed to handle exactly what this location is. It's an important junction in the city. This is currently who visits the Ashley Landing area. You can see it is by and large, the West Ashley residents, Peninsula residents, and a little bit in North Charleston, but these are who's coming to this location on a habitual basis. This data being pulled from placer data that we have access to for economic development. This one got a little bit faded out, but this was something else I wanted to bring up. This is a 5, 10, and 20-minute drive radius of this location. Something that you'll pick up is that within 20-minute drive, the entirety of city annex parcels can get to this spot. And it is, again, along 2 major roadways. You are not having to thread through downtown traffic. You are not having to navigate side streets. You are coming on major arterial roads directly to a spot that can host civic events, that can host Spoleto, Piccolo Spoleto, Moja, can host city council, design review board. This is going to provide even greater access to our residents in terms of approaching the city. So conclusion, Sumar Street parcel is basically a 15-minute drive away from everywhere in the city. It is ideally located for a new civic center. Both roadways are currently handling 20 to 25 cars, and they can handle more than that, especially with the improvements that the county is going to be doing. The city has held over 14 public input and information sessions between the West Ashley Revitalization Commission, City Council, neighborhood groups, and development boards. We have placed requirements on the developer from the community in terms of having a mixture of small-scale retail and restaurants, having an outdoor gathering spot as a focus, creating a civic space that can hold events and meetings, that there should be no above-ground parking structures, and that the buildings need to be suburban in scale. Additional requirements that we put on them as city is that the site needs to accomplish Charleston Rises, which is our version of LEED green building standards, and that it also needs to accommodate for Dutch dialogues, which they are doing with underground detention, and actually the parking structure as proposed with underground will do additional water storage during catastrophic water events, helping the area and not flooding it out, because this is some of the highest, driest ground that we have around here.
I wanted to add 2 things to Eric's presentation. Number one, and I just confirm with Chris behind me, that the Piggly Wiggly closed its doors in 2013. This property has been vacant for 10 years. In addition to what Eric has reported to you as to the number of public input sessions we've had, that does not include my constituent meetings over the period of time from beginning in 2016. My meetings are usually on either a Saturday or Thursday at Charlestown Landing or other some locations. So the 14 meetings are the minimum. And I think probably over time, in addition to my meetings, I also attended a special meeting at Westminster Presbyterian Church. So close to 20 public input meetings have been engaged with discussion, review, input of this particular project. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So any questions for Eric? Yes, sir. Councilmember Gregory.
Couple of questions.
Yeah.
One of your early slides showed that 61%, I guess, of those participants wanted a passive park. And I think you had them rated. And I think 4th on that list was a civic space, I think you said. So my question is, did something change so that we didn't do a passive park? 1, 2, additional office space for the city in the civic space. And my question is, why do we need additional office space when the trend is just the opposite, that people are working from anywhere now in the world? So why would we need additional office space? is one of the questions I have. And the second one is what happened to the passive space? I see you have gathering, community gathering. And as I look at the picture there, I don't see much space for that, for community gathering. I see some green space, but the majority of the space is surface parking. So where are those two concepts in the plan?
All right.
Passive park, and I guess it's a city question.
Yeah.
Why do we need additional office space when the trend is just the opposite?
Well, that's two different questions. And if I may, could y'all mind if I call on Jason Ward to address the part about the green space and the kind of public related programming that has been talked about for that little 6 area, which includes this is, I don't know if you got that shot that kind of shows the stage area. It kind of forms a little, in addition to 6 where you see the green space, there's like a little plaza beside it. And then on the back side of number 1, there's literally like a little stage or place to have movies. And then the surface parking is allowed to expand to have, community gatherings. Obviously you wouldn't be able to park there if we were planning something like that, but you can have a farmer's market or a auto show or some other community style event. So, admittedly 60% wanted some kind of park feature, but I don't think the prevailing wind was, or concept was that this would be a solid park, if you know what I mean, that it would be a combination or mixed use with some green space feature, public feature, because just of really the location and the design of the buildings along Sam Rittenberg kind of forms a buffer, so even though you got 20,000 cars a day going by out there, it kind of protects that public space. If you think of the spot up at Upper King Street, what do they call it? The Pacific Box and Crate, how they have the restaurant and the food court, and then they have the open area with the green space. It's kind of intended to simulate that. Isn't that about right, Jason? So now on the office space question, and Rick has delved into this quite a bit with me. Admittedly, during COVID, we've now adopted our first official work at home policy, which allows up to 2 days a week as approved by your supervisor. But honestly, there are many positions we have that you need to serve the public. And so the city is not moving towards any kind of full work at home policy. There may be a few exceptions with the permission of department head and supervisor, but our policy has a limited work at home kind of environment. And admittedly, our employment has been down. As we all know, we've had a lot of open positions and we've addressed that to where we're going to hire back up. But we are a growing city and we service a lot of people that live West Ashley. I think 60 or 70,000 of our population lives West Ashley. So to have some presence there would make sense, we feel. Also, there's some departments like stormwater that have grown, and that department got split away from Public Works. So we think that there's and have identified some departments that we could move to this space over time. That would make sense. Maybe Rick could help me out on this. He spent a little more time on this.
One of the things we have right now is stormwater is combined with public works. And they don't have enough space. And as they expand and we bring more people on, we're gonna have to figure out a new space for stormwater. Resilience would love to be close to emergency management because they do so many things together. There's no way to do that right now. Looking at things like children, youth, and families. They don't necessarily have to be in Calhoun Street. They could be somewhere else, and stormwater or resilience could take over that space. So there are a lot of, we're growing, and as council provides more positions each year in the annual budget, we just don't have enough space to house them right now. For instance, our internal auditor right now will not have an office space if he or she were on board. We're trying to figure out if there's space in legal where they could place them, but it's not good space either. So we do need some extra space. How much, we just don't know. It's tough. And one of the things we've done, for instance, is we've given some of the to George space to the Gilliard. And that's very contiguous to our public works and stormwater. They had that space that would solve a problem, but we've made a commitment to the Gilliard to give them that office space. So it's a challenge.
So another idea was our customer service call center, that we could, place it at this facility. Of course, Eric and a couple select staff and recreation, we plan to have a separate team leader and recreation for different parts of the city. Those folks that are focused on West Ashley, like Eric Pullman, be kind of the logical place for him to call home base, and for us to have a service center in the midst of where over half of our population lives today. Yeah, and it's growing. It's growing. Councilmember Shade.
If I could just answer part of Councilmember Dudley's question about the park. Of course, I attended every one of these public input sessions. And so what Eric was talking about earlier of this gathering spot or this open passive park you're right. It was a critical component of something that folks wanted over here. But it wasn't, to my understanding and my discussions with folks who attended these sessions, that they wanted the entire parcel to be a park. Part of the reason for that is because there's about 40 to 45,000 cars that travel around here. And so there was a sort of a practical component of how many people would actually just use this as a complete passive park. But they do want a spot that there is some outdoor activity. And so the current proposed designs that was gone through the design review board incorporated things the mayor had mentioned about, such as an outdoor concert, such as a Piccolo Spoleto outdoor event. So the space looks kind of small in comparison to the overall plan, but it was trying to capture part of the public's concern about green space. So could it be bigger? Yes. Could he incorporate more? But yes. Could we capture more of the point at the intersection with 7 and 171 come together? And Councilmember Waring had brought out a couple of times about maybe capturing some of that property that belongs to the state and using that to our advantage as well. But there had been a lot of talk about this, but I just want to emphasize, I don't think the whole point was that the entire space be used as a passive park. That was not, in my discussions with folks who attended these meetings, that was not their concept. Their idea was some green space and some outdoor activity opportunities out there.
Without objection, Jason, could I call on you for just a minute you've had your head around the use of the public use and the private use of the property, and just kind of walk us through all the concepts that have been discussed about that and plans.
Yes, sir. So the beauty of
Is
this
that mic on? Check.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
talk right into it. Yeah, thank you.
The beauty of this design was really to create the lawn as kind of the center of the stage, if you will. It's the focal point of the project. It's where you would gather, but the area, the open space and what we would call the parking area is really for overflow of and an extension of that lawn. So if there's live music, if there is, a football game on the screen there, or if it's a if it's a classic car show, to the mayor's point, it's an extension of that lawn for the community to gather. So our expectations are, that parking lot could be demised in a way to extend from that center gathering area. And that's how we've really created that community gathering space to extend into that. And if you look at our design, I know it's probably hard to tell from this, but it's also not going to feel like an asphalt parking lot. It's going to feel more in line with something that is more soft. It's not going to be just a, for lack of a better way to say it, what it is today, which is just a large, parking lot of asphalt. So we're going to try to gather in that space, create some benches, some areas that tie to that center area, and it all connect, harmoniously is best the way I know how to say it. So food trucks, boat shows, all of those kinds of things, that would be the area that extends to that center point. So I hope that helps answer the question. And for reference, and I'm a little bit, sensitive to say this, but if I remember the number correctly, which I'm happy to confirm, that center lawn area can hold a couple hundred people easily, either seated or standing, for an event of a live music or something to that effect. So if that gives you the scale of it, you can see how this site can really grow and accommodate a large event.
And in addition, he located strategically the restaurant and cafe space. So you have, dining areas and balconies overlooking the green space as well.
We wanted it to feel safe for the families. We have plans for an ice cream shop, an arcade for the kids, all of those kinds of things to bring the families together and allow it to feel like a safe gathering space as well. So, if there isn't I'll say more of a live music event, that may be something that the kids aren't interested in, but they'll have a place to be there, get some ice cream, have some connectivity to feel like to the event, and it all kinds of tie together as a nice commercial space.
Your microphone, please.
How does the underground parking fit into all this? The entry, the exits, where does it fit underneath all that?
Yes, sir. So it's hard to see from this perspective, but we could definitely zoom in on it. Is it okay if I walk up to the screen? Would that be
Yeah,
appropriate?
that'd be fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Hold the microphone if you would while you talk.
So this area right here is where we currently have proposed to enter and exit off of Sumar Street. So this would be the ingress and egress. And right when you come into the site, the reason we positioned this underground parking at this location was so that this area could be closed off, and then you just funnel underground. So it doesn't take away from our event lawn and the events that could be happening in this zone right here. So this area right here could be completely closed off for the events, and then you pull in and you go underground to park for the events. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Okay.
Or show kind of where the footprint of the underground parking would be and where you would come out.
Sure. So the footprint, so the ingress and egress of the parking is this number 9 right here. So that would be where you pull in and where you pull out. And it could be a little bit out of scale, but about where this building line right here, and then covering the entire boundary of the site is the underground parking. We have maximized every space. I mean, if you can think about it from a standpoint of this building, the Civic building is designed to hold events for up to 350 people. And if the lawn is holding an event for a few hundred people, it could really tax our parking situation. And so, we wanted to feel like people had a safe, accessible way to park and utilize the property and access the property for events. And so that's why that's there. But you can see right here, this is part of our underground stormwater detention. And then when you pull in the site, this is the ramp down. And then that's how you would park under the property, with stair towers and elevators to access up into the buildings and for the access to the property.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
of the existing parking lot. It's gonna be an engineering fee to make sure that none of that goes down to the parking floor.
Yes, sir. So, and it's, there are examples of this, and, we have a lot of engineers on this team that have had experience with this and, know a lot more than I do about this, to be frank, but this actually exists. To Eric's point earlier, this is one of the higher points in the market, and this idea, based on the, groundwater table and everything else, really makes sense to do this here. And so from from all of that said, yes, it's accessible. It's reasonable to expect this. And, this has been done on the peninsula, but also multiple levels down. The good news is that, we're only going one level down. So we're not really pushing into the ground too deep there.
So while we're talking about parking, if you look back at the other diagram of site plan, and if you had to do above ground parking, obviously it would take up the footprint of that open surface level parking. And what would that kind of look like? I mean, to make up for that underground, how big would it have to be? And does that work very well?
I mean, it would probably change our design and our approach, frankly. But if you were to think about it in a situation of, if we were to put a above ground deck here, my best guess is that it would be at least 5 or 6 stories tall, based on our parking loads and what we need to accommodate the program on the site for public events.
Right.
That's really that's what I would assume. And if you decide to change the program, if I could be so forward to say that if the private buildings were to go away, I think we really only pick up about 60 spaces there, based on the setbacks and based on the buildable area of the site. Well, if we were to, no, I think I could say, that doing a vertical garage is less costly per space. I mean, I think that is a fair statement. But I think that it depends on, if you can think about it this way, from a community events perspective, if you were to put a 5-story garage here, it doesn't feel very approachable. It doesn't flow into the site. If you can imagine a farmer's market out here with, events going on, or a food truck rodeo, or people gathering, it's not conducive to the kind of environment that we planned and programmed based on the community feedback.
Keep the bottom floor still usable.
Correct. So Landmark, we've done a few projects where there's a podium level where we raise the entire building and we park all the way underneath it. It's a harder approach. People don't really have a good idea of how to access the site, but it is an absolute solution. And really, at the end of the day, the approach that you were suggesting isn't much different than what we've designed here, because all of the structure of our buildings are tied to the underground parking structure as well. So if you think of this as we really just lowered the finished floor elevation, and our structure, it's really just one big podium level, if you can imagine it that way.
So, at this point, with council's permission, I'd like to introduce Chris Fetter with Faison, who has planned some development across the street, re-swapping the public store. We've seen a proposal on that. Chris, I just wanted you to take a minute and share with us how this interacts with what y'all are thinking now long-term, and how this might have impacted your thinking or inspired or not, what you're thinking about doing across the street. Of course, we'll still have executive session for any specific negotiation kind of point or legal advice, but I think this would be a fair question to ask for the public comment portion.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Chris Fetter, based in Charlotte, North Carolina. We've been talking to Publix for about 2.5 years now. They're on a ground lease on Ashley Plaza. They have 15 more years left on that ground lease. So we were watching the progress that Landmark and the city were doing on this on Sumar Street. We were trying to reposition the Publix and negotiate with them, so you don't have to look at the backside of a loading area off of Sumar, and relocate them in line make it a true grocery anchored center. Well, I don't have the aerials. I'm sorry, I didn't come prepared with aerials, but we can go to Google Earth if you want to look at that. But so Publix agreed to for us to build them a new box. And we would relocate that where the Napa Dollar Tree, it's a 1968 structure, was built, the first department store in West Ashley. That building, that structure is not in good physical shape. So the timing of this really, we thought this was an incredible opportunity in terms of the timing to move Publix over, bring them in line with the rest of the center, and keep most of our retail to the south side of the property. That would open up about 8 acres, where then you see the multifamily piece. I think that's there. Oh, my glasses on, excuse me.
It is, yes.
Okay.
Hard to
So
see.
then we introduced a multifamily concept to complement the retail center, trying to provide true mixed use in this corridor. The orientation of the multifamily was really dictated upon where it sat on Sumar Street and how the edge of it, the front door, was closer to Sam Rittenberg and closer to the city landmark project. That was all by intent because we thought that would be a better for the ULI studies and all for the planning community. We thought that would be a better way to relate the building to have that energy focused on the north side of our property. We, in that way, you have a real divide between the retail and the multifamily, which would interact, in our opinion, better. We also use the same architectural vocabulary, not exactly the same, but we use that to influence us what Ilio proposed in DRB. So we were trying to create something more of a, without collaborating directly, but we were trying to respond in a very thoughtful way that would make a lot more sense along the edge of Sam Ritt and Old Town.
Gotcha. Any questions for Mr. Fetter? Any comments? Yes, sir. Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Fetter, hypothetically, I know you were not affiliated with the project when Sunoco was trying to put a 20 pump gas station there, so you came on after that.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I was a multifamily developer for Faison, started in 2010.
Okay,
The project, this never contemplated, the Sunoco team was our retail team that did that brought that
Right.
to you all.
well, I don't want to dwell on that too much, but that precipitated to us, becoming owners of the property. Hypothetically, which you all know today, combining the multifamily and moving the Publix and all of that. If you all still own that property, or if there was a public-private partnership where Sumar Street was closed and you could reknit that triangle back to, or the majority of that triangle back to what you all are doing now, what you envision doing now. What are the potential bridges that you think, for example, the underground parking, at 85,000 cost of space is just unreal. I think that's why the developer doesn't do it, and you come in the government for that. Not you, but they're coming to government for that. If they were reknitted, maybe there may be a public-private partnership on y'all's parking garage, hypothetically, if things were framed differently. Are there possibilities, because I thought that was going to be part of this actual discussion that we're having right now. Things can be reframed potentially better. Because at the end of the day, this vote is going to come down to whether we want to spend 45+ million at this site. If the city doesn't do that, I think we should have a plan B, plan C, whatever, but certainly it shouldn't die on the vine because the Civic Center and the underground parking garage didn't survive. If we were to combine efforts with what you all are trying to do, maybe that parking garage, maybe that underground parking garage goes away. Do you see that as being any possibilities?
Well, I appreciate you asking me that question. I never really contemplated that question. I mean, since we lost Sumar to the city in 2018, we really were focused on how we could reposition our property. And we've done, incremental benefits to the property with the Starbucks, this small
Right.
shop space.
Right.
So I really haven't thought about that. I will, objectively, I would say, anytime you're dealing with triangles in real estate development, it's tricky.
Right.
It's tough geometry.
It's tricky for us.
So I've done a Flatiron building in Charlotte, and it's just, there's inefficiencies in triangle built shaped parcels. That's all I'll say. I've not really thought about that. I'm just giving you a developer.
I understand, but I mean, I think at least the effort in a discussion like this is to hopefully tear down a Chinese wall between, I look at Sumar Street as being that Chinese wall between what the city's proposing, the cities and the developers proposing, and then now you all are proposing some, potentially exciting changes in the area that I just don't think it should be one or the other. What happens if we looked at that moving forward, together on that? I think there's some common ground that could make sense for both tracks is what I'm saying. I don't know how we get to that conversation. But I think we should try to get to that conversation versus, we have been, Mr. Mayor and council, working this one for what, 4, 5 years?
We had the timeline before
Okay.
you came.
That's fine, that's fine.
Yeah.
I can
Yes, sir.
estimate it. But, Mr. Ward, can you come to the microphone?
No.
'Cause I don't want to assume this answer. With all the development that you propose on the Piggly Wiggly site, how much of the cost of the underground parking will the developer pay for?
How much of the cost of the underground parking will the developer pay for?
Correct.
Our approach to this was modeled after the tech center, which was that we are going to take the obligation and the burden of guaranteeing a maximum price to the city at our risk, so that you know what you're getting in return for our cost. And then we would lease back the spaces, no different than the tech center, at this location for our private projects for their use. And so that was our approach, right, wrong, or indifferent. That was how we approached it.
Let me ask the question again. I think we were told, Ms. Wharton, how much is the parking garage going to cost? 23 million. How much of the 23 million will the developer pay for? Or
Well,
contribute towards?
So we're interested in having that conversation. The point.
Is it 10%? Is it 5%? Is it 0? Is it 50%? I mean, what is it?
So the proposal that, and sorry if I wasn't clear, the proposal that we made was that we are going to pay for 100% of it,
Okay.
which would then be reimbursed by the city, which would then we would return in leasing parking spaces to create a revenue for the city. So that's how we approached it. So, if you're familiar with the tech center garage, that's what we modeled it after.
Thank you, Mr. Ward.
Okay. And one point, if you don't mind, one point of clarity, I just did get this from our architect. The lawn area can occupy 587 individuals by code. The terrace area that's designed off of that can occupy an additional 250. This is all the civic portion of the project. And the building itself on the city was roughly designed to occupy 350 with inside. So this project, not including the parking area, could accommodate almost 1,000 individuals. Yes, without the parking area.
Councilmember Seekings?
Thanks. I've got a question, if you don't mind. Can you put the plat, oh, it's right there, sorry. So tell me, if you don't mind, what's going on there along Sam Rettenberg on the south side? I see the shadow trees in there and then the white buildings. Is that sidewalk? What's going on in that?
So Councilman Seekings, if I understand your question correctly, there is a sidewalk all the way down Sam Rittenberg on the boundary of the property. And in the middle of that, there's planned for a public transportation bus stop.
You were reading my mind. I was trying to figure out. Of
Yes,
the
sir.
1,187 people, if you don't drive here,
Yes,
How are
sir.
you gonna get it?
And we hope that that will be some synergy with us, that we can establish a ride share drop off there in the evenings when transit or CARTA is not running.
Councilmember Shade.
So let me just chime in a little bit about some of the follow-up questions that council's asked. So Eric, if you can go back to the plan with Faison with the new Publix. So we've talked about the overall work that the county has been dealing with on the improvements for traffic flow and pedestrian come through. If there's an orange line. Can you show them the orange line where the bylaw used to be in the Palmetto State? Yeah, so that orange line reflects a path from Orange Grove Road to Sam Rittenberg. That was part of one of the initial plans that the county had was either creating a road there, but creating a pedestrian bike friendly path. So it goes to your question, Councilmember Seekings, that folks over in Sandhurst would take advantage of this opportunity to come from Sandhurst or Huntington Woods or not Old Town Acres, Ashley Hall Manor, in that particular area, to use it as a cut through. And I've talked to several folks about the ability to get from that particular point over Sumar Street and to be able to go to Charlestown Landing. Further down from that particular point is Amberley Street, and can you point exactly? Yep. So there's an improvement that the county has in mind for that. And Eric, if you can just sort of elaborate on what's that Amberley point is going to entail.
Sure. So in general, what the county is doing with their portion of the Old Town District Transportation Improvement Project, I think that's the short title for it. They are going to be improving Orange Grove Road over here in terms of the intersection with Sam Rittenberg and Orange Grove. There will be some median closure along the Sam Rittenberg just before the split area, because that's where a lot of the accidents occur in this spot, is people taking a left coming in from Northbridge into Northbridge. So they will be closing some of that access down a little bit. In addition to that, you have 10-foot multi-use pathways that are going to connect into the existing extra wide sidewalk. It's only, I think it's 6 or 8 feet is what currently exists from the CVS on Sam Rittenberg, Orange Grove up to Northbridge Park. They're going to connect in there with a 10-foot path that will take you down to Charlestown Landing and the new county recreation park on that side of Old Town. There will be another 10-foot multi-use trail that is on the other side of Old Town, going from Charlestown up to the Sumar Street location. You have a signal at Amberley that's going to be coming in. Again, that was a high impact area for vehicular. So we are getting a signal put in there that's going to have a full pedestrian crossing, all 4 legs. And Sam Rittenberg from Dickens Street down to Orange Grove, each side of it will have the 10-foot multi-use trail again. So that is how we're anticipating the community is going to be able to get to this location by biking. Some of the people who live closer can walk. More than likely, people will be biking to this location, especially with the extra wide multi-use pathways.
And one more point while you're up there, Eric, the area on Charlestown Estates Road where the new Publix will be located, that does not create a square or a perfect T on Old Town Road. So coming out of Charlestown Estates is Donahue. On the other side of that is Charlestown Estates Drive. And so what part of what Faison is going to do is give us an easement to square off that land and make that a more perfect T as well. And I think, isn't there some sidewalks extension on that part, I believe, as well?
Correct. And also right now there's a loading entrance over on this backside that is all of 6 feet from Charlestown Drive. That will be closed off, and actually Faison has already anticipated that. They welcome it in terms of closing that off in how they would have their loading access for the new Publix location.
No, Councilman Waring, another question?
Can you tell me how you, once they close off, and I understand why they close off the left turn into North Bridge. How would you get in, with the exception of a right turn lane into Old Town Shopping Center? No, I know, but I mean, how would you get in it?
Same way you do now, wouldn't it? They're not changing that.
So they are retaining, this will be a right out at this location. There is a left turn lane onto North Bridge,
Right.
but there's some additional turn lanes that are in this location along here that, for instance, go into the church or go into that location up there that they will be closing off, because those are the dangerous ones where you're crossing 3 or 4, you're merging quickly to try and get to that left turn.
Yeah, so it's gonna really be right turn only.
In some locations, yes.
Well, right now, the one they're closing off, you make the left turn, come into North Bridge, and if you want to make a right into the parking lot to Old Town, I've done it myself, you go in that way. That's gonna be closed off.
That is what the county transportation plan is
Right.
suggesting, yes.
Thank you.
All right. So if we may now call for, can I entertain a motion? We go into executive session so we could have a little further
Second.
deliberation with our partners. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.